I'm Monica Hall, and I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska during the oil boom of the 70s. And I talk to my friends now that grew up at the same age as I am, that grew up in the lower 48. They can't even relate to the things that happened up here in Alaska. It was the Wild West in a sense that people came here to escape the lower 48. They wanted to get away from things, maybe from the law. There were all kinds of people here trying to make something of themselves. There was prostitution, there was drug trafficking, there was gambling, there were gangs, there was a plethora of opportunity for bad people to make their mark. And I was a kid that had very strict, very overprotective mother, and I don't like to be tethered and controlled. And I snuck out my window and I put myself in places, some really dark places, saw some really dark things. My parents had no idea what was going on. I was a juvenile delinquent. I was breaking into houses as a kid. I was taking the drugs of the 70s. I beat people up. I hurt people. I was hurting. I didn't know it was not normal. I didn't have a yardstick, to compare it to. I figured that it was my life. It was normal. And even so much after my kids started telling me, this, you really should write this down because this isn't really normal, this stuff that happened to you. But it still felt like, well, it was just my life. No big deal. And then when I started writing, and I couldn't stop writing. It just kept flowing and flowing. And initially there were periods in my life that were basically missing. There was no memory. And then I'd have a small memory and it would add on a little bit more and a little bit more. I wrote when I was a kid, when I was, isolated as a child and 15-year-olds and pregnant. And I had been carrying around boxes of journals, address books, and I think I intuitively knew or subconsciously knew I needed to write all this down, all the things that happened. It was absolutely terrifying to hear because I'd buried all that stuff. I didn't want to think about it. So this writing has immensely healed a lot of things that I felt guilty for, things that I thought I had done wrong, that I realized I was a victim. As a kid, I was groomed by my father to put myself in places to be hurt. I was also an adoptee, so I was forever terrified of being abandoned. The ultimate people pleaser is what I was. And so instead of setting boundaries for myself, I put myself in places where I'd be harmed, where I was abducted, or where I was raped, or where I was whatever. We were a very strict Catholic family. I felt tremendous shame. I just hid it. I told lie after lie. I was 15. I didn't tell my parents that I'd been raped. An adoptee here, this child was the only person in the world that was a part of me. So to give her up was, excruciating. The grief was so great that I thought I was going to die. So great. And I remember I looked back at that hospital and I just said to myself, I just won't think about it right now. I just won't think about it right now. I just won't think about it right now. And that's what I did. I had learned to stuff the things that were painful in my life so that I could survive. I felt like I'd done something wrong, or I must be shit to have been treated this way. It must be because I deserve it. And now as an adult, I look back at that and I go, oh, hell no, you didn't deserve it. You were a kid. I've had so many people in the last year or two reaching out to me and telling me things that they've never told anyone, and I feel so honored to have people share that stuff with me. And it's because that I'm writing this stuff that it's painful and people judge. And I'm past the age of worrying about being judged, I'm Monica Hall. I'm writing my memoir and I'm discovering just how much my adolescence and my childhood complicated my life.